the place where we learn about improv. Cause public speaking can take you so far. Improv-ing speaking. Say yes and flex your creative thinking. Improv-ing speaking. Say yes and flex your creative thinking.
All right, and welcome everyone to the Improv-ing Speaking podcast. I'm so excited that you're joining today. I'm your host, Dayna Gowan, and you are in for a real treat today. I know I'm going to learn something, and I assume you'll learn something too, but selfishly, I know I'm going to learn a lot from today's guest. And before we jump into that, I want to just give you the rundown of what we're all about here at the Improv-ing Speaking podcast. The goals of this podcast are 1, to help people understand the benefits of improvisation, 2, to demonstrate how improv shows up in all aspects of our lives, and 3, to inspire people to try new things, get out of their heads and judgment zones, and find creative passions and outlets that can help them. And our guest today is an experienced improviser who uses improv in every aspect of his work and life. And we're going to learn what that means and more. So let me introduce you to our amazing guest, Christopher Bogue. Chris is based out of Chicago, and he coaches people to get on camera and create mercifully short video content for business. He is the creator of the Complete Guide to Selling on Video, a digital course on video prospecting for sales. He is also a sketch comedy writer, improv trainer, and host of the podcast, Chris Sells His Soul. Please welcome the cool content creating Christopher Bogue. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dayna.
Chris, I'm so excited that you're here, and I have so much to learn from you, so I'm just going to ask all the questions.
I'm thrilled. I can't believe I found somebody else who loves talking about this stuff.
Right? Improv, public speaking, and then I need all the help with video content. So I've got a full list of questions, but before we get into that, I do want to tell our listeners how we met. We met through the magic of the LinkedIn algorithm. Sometimes I post hashtags like hashtag improv, hashtag improvisation. And I don't know if people click on those, but you post a lot about improv and it pops up on the algorithm. It's like, oh, that's cool. And we got connected that way.
Yeah. I notice when other improvisers are out there, and this has kind of been the story of the past few years where I've been creating content and running my own business and training people to get on video, is one by one, people kind of reveal themselves. And, you know, it was my whole hypothesis. The whole reason why I started a business is there's a lot of entertainers out there. There's a lot of performers out there. And a lot of people went to acting school, or they went to improv school, or they went to music school or dance school. And then at some point, they decided to get a serious job, quote unquote. And they put those skills away. They buried it under the bed. They put it in the closet. They decided to put on their serious hat, and they got a job, and they maybe started a family. They started doing whatever. And yeah, we actually just went through this really weird consciousness altering phase known as COVID, where especially
Right.
if you work in the tech world, work and home kind of clashed together in a way we've never seen them before. And we're in this reality now where no matter who you are, if you want to be successful, you kind of got to be a YouTube star a little bit. You got to at least be able to get out there occasionally on video to represent your brand, represent your business. And I am trying to be loud and proud and telling all these secret artists, hey, come bring those talents out of the closet, get it out from underneath the bed, go up there and be entertaining for 30 seconds now, because that suddenly became more valuable than people realize. And you have this advantage that you're not utilizing. And actually, if you just go out there and do anything for 15 seconds, that's actually way more interesting than most of what you'll find on LinkedIn, which is, let's be honest, mostly garbage.
I won't disagree with that. I think there's a lot of stuff out there, right? There's a lot of noise on LinkedIn. And I will say I'm probably guilty of adding to the noise on LinkedIn, but you are posting a lot of lively and fun videos where you're wearing different costumes and you've got fun backgrounds and you do a nice job with like your edits and cuts. And you have over 10,000 plus followers on LinkedIn. So you're clearly doing something right. My question for you is, are you mostly on LinkedIn, and why LinkedIn instead of like Instagram or YouTube and stuff?
I actually love LinkedIn with no irony. I literally love that place. And there's a very specific reason why. There are no children on LinkedIn, Dayna.
Oh, uh-huh.
That is why I love it. It is the only social platform that was designed for adults. I don't have to compete with twerking teenagers.
That's so true.
And this is another reason why I started teaching improv to the business world, right? Because if you want to go be the funniest improviser in Chicago, that's really hard. And if you want to be the funniest comedian in Los Angeles, that's really hard.
Mhm.
It's a lot easier to be the funniest guy in some sales meeting, right? And it is this thing where LinkedIn is known for being very artificial. It's known for being a place that's full of cringe. It's known as a place where, it's just very kind of vacuous, like talking about how much money you have and, these really kind of like cringy stories. And what I tell my clients is you can talk to your audience like adults here. Not only are there no children on LinkedIn, but this is an audience that tends to have more education and more income than the average users on any other social media website. So if you go talk to your audience like adults, they don't expect that. There's something about business speak that talks to people like they're idiots. And I'm like, you can actually make adult jokes on YouTube or on LinkedIn rather. You can go for those highbrow references. And it's actually just kind of refreshing because nobody out there is really doing that right now. So like I put stuff on YouTube, I put stuff on TikTok, I put stuff on Instagram, I stream my podcast to these other platforms. But when I'm honing in on like, where do I want this content to live primarily? The answer is LinkedIn. And again, I looked around Chicago and got very jaded because it's a city where everybody and their grandmother has taken IO and Second City classes and nobody's making any money, But all of a sudden, when I went out on LinkedIn and I started teaching businesses and I started teaching sales teams, I started coaching entrepreneurs how to do this, they were like, whoa, this is amazing stuff. All this yes and kind of theory, and I didn't even have to leave Chicago. I just turned on the webcam and started doing it in a different medium.
I love that. I love that you're leaning into LinkedIn because there's so much noise and stuff and fluff on LinkedIn, and you're making it exciting and fun again. And we need more of that on LinkedIn, and you're helping people to bring more of that to the table. I just love that.
Thank you.
Well, and Chris, you mentioned you're from Chicago. You're still in Chicago, right?
Born and raised.
Yeah. So you started your improv journey in Chicago. Can you tell us more about your improv and sketch comedy journey? How and why did you get started in improv and comedy?
Yeah, it started when I was about 11 or 12 years old. And I would watch Whose Line Is It Anyways on
Nice.
ABC.
Yeah.
I think that was how a lot of people discovered improv. And before that, growing up, I always loved Saturday Night Live. So I grew up in the 90s, which was Chris Farley, Bob Odenkirk was writing behind the scenes.
Yes.
Tim Meadows, another Second City guy. Tina Fey, Second City IO alumni. Rachel Dratch, Amy Poehler, Key and Peele. I was a big Kids in the Hall fan growing up. They were all Second City Toronto. And yeah, I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I heard about Second City. It sounded like this magical place. I always dreamed about it. Then I started watching Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I just wanted to start doing it. So I was a Boy Scout when I was in 6th grade. And we just started playing the games at the closing campfire for the weekend. We would play Party Quirks and Scenes from a Hat and all those kind of games. And I liked it. And then senior year of high school, I started an improv group called the Waffle Hut. It was me and 8 of my friends, the Waffle Hut. We started doing local shows. We started building a little following. I went to college and I started doing improv at ISU, Illinois State University, with their improv mafia. So it's a big state university, but they really only had one dedicated improv group on campus. And that was where I really sunk my teeth into it, because we were doing at least one show a week. And we were really into experimenting with forms. And I don't know if it's like this in any of the places you hang out in, but in Chicago, there's always this battle between short form versus long form.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they kind of don't respect each other a lot of the time. The long form people.
The long form people look down on short form.
Yeah. So I don't know how educated on improv your audience is, but people tend to think short form is very gimmicky. It's very kind of like easy. It's kind of like cheap or whatever. And then the criticism of long form improv is that it's pretentious. It's oftentimes the improvisers seem like they're playing more for themselves than for the enjoyment of the audience. If you read too much into the theory, it's kind of really up its own ass about what a fantastic art form it is. But, those people who were on Whose Line Is It Anyway doing short form, Colin Mockery, Ryan Stiles, they all were long form people. They did Heralds. They were Second City people. And I was always taught to do both. And my shows were always a hybrid of you do short form in the beginning and then you end with a long form, a herald or a montage or something. And then after college, so we won the national championship that year. We were like college improv national champions.
Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah. We started a group afterwards called Octavarius, and we had a run in Chicago for a few years called Octavarius So Nefarious. And that was a hybrid show of improv and short form and long form and sketch comedy. So our tagline was one night only every week. And every week we would have a different host, a different member of the group would write it. But the first half of the show would be sketch comedy. And then the second half would be our format called the Nefarious, which is like kind of a long form with short form elements in it. So we had that show for a few years. I got used to working with a big group. I was very freeing to work with talented improvisers who would just, when you ran the show, they would do your sketches, they would do whatever. We would go really all out with those. And you see a lot of that reflected in the stuff that I do today. Even my live show today, I very much treat it as an event. There's sketches that I write to promote it. I have my guest star come in and we do something. It's all based around a theme. So yeah, I spent like a few years doing at least every Sunday night at Comedy Sports in Chicago, this original show that we came up with. We had a lot of guest stars. We did a lot of formats. I've done improvised musicals. I've done improvised plays. I did an improvised wrestling show, improvised sitcoms, improvised soap operas. And then a lot of my group moved to Los Angeles and I stayed in Chicago. And that was an interesting time too, because my friends all went to LA to become famous. And some of them did get rather famous doing comedy out there. And I got a little bit more experimental. I did some experimental theater in Chicago. And I went to Second City and I learned how to write and direct. And I spent some time up in the director's booth where I would write the show, but there would be a cast and there would be a band. And I was writing like 90-minute shows where I was not in them. I was just the director, Wow. And then I did some television work, and then kind of there was this perfect storm in COVID where I kind of said, screw it. I'm going to go just start my own business, start my own consultancy, and I'm going to do this full time. But I had to do 15 different forms of improv and sketch and theater for it to kind of all turn into my own signature kind of style. And, everything I've done has rubbed off on me a little bit. But at the end of the day, when I get too fancy, it all just comes back to go yes and say the thing that's real, and the comedy will just happen.
Wow, what a journey. Oh my gosh. So, I mean, just putting a number to it, where would you say you're at? Like, what year are you in your improv and comedy journey?
Probably been doing it for about 20 years, probably a
Wow.
little bit more than that. Yeah. So
Yeah,
off
that's
and on.
amazing.
There are times where I'm like doing multiple shows a week. There have been times where I would have a year or two where I wasn't really doing much of anything. But yeah, I kind of adopted this kind of anything goes style, in part because we were very experimental as a group and we were always coming up with new forms. I mentioned like when we did an improvised wrestling show, like we had actual professional wrestlers we worked
Oh,
with
wow.
who were teaching us how to like throw people through chairs and stuff, or through
Oh,
tables.
it's
Yeah. So, and we would do stuff on campus. We would do shows with the local poetry group, the local dance group. Illinois State has a university circus. So we did like a circus hybrid show where we worked with circus performers. So it really instilled in me this sense of there are no rules here. The rules are meant to be broken. Anybody can be entertaining. Any art form can work alongside improv. If you throw a bunch of these oddball styles together and you go in with that attitude of, I'm going to support my partner, I'm going to play the scene honestly, we're going to find the fun, we're going to find the game, and we're going to play the hell out of it. Yeah, you can go up there with pretty much anybody and come away with a show. And it's really not. I'm one of those people who believes anybody can improvise. You just go out there, and as long as you try something, it's better than what most people do, which is nothing. Most people don't do anything. Most people would rather sit on the sidelines and criticize, or watch, or just watch and enjoy. Once you're the person up on stage playing the games, all of a sudden you discover you're funnier than you thought you were, and you're more able to come up with those lines and those quick thinking moments than you realize, because you really have no other choice. You're up there and you got to do something, and it really doesn't take that much.
Well, I love that you watched Whose Line Is It Anyway, and you jumped in the Boy Scouts, and then you made your own group your senior year. Like, see, I watched Whose Line Is It Anyway, and I went, they're so good. I could never be that good. So I was that person that was like on the sidelines going, oh, I could never do that. That's not me. They're great. I'm not, kind of thinking. And I totally agree with you. Now that I've done improv and tried it, anyone can do it. We just limit ourselves so much into thinking that we or ourselves, like we can't do it, but others can. And the truth is, you totally can do it. You're the only one stopping yourself.
Well, what made you make that change? When did you decide from being, I'm a person who can't do this, to I'm a person who's going to try this?
I think conquering my fear of public speaking really helped, which I did through Toastmasters. And then in Toastmasters, they have table topics, which is impromptu speaking. So when I moved to LA, I was like, well, LA is such a big improv town, and I love UCB, and I want to take a class. And having that foundation of that public speaking training, I was more apt to try it rather than limit myself. But I say that hesitantly, saying that you don't have to conquer your fear of public speaking to do an improv class. If you're scared of public speaking, improv can help too.
Yeah, that's my advice to anybody who doesn't feel like they're quote unquote creative, or somebody who has like writer's block, or they can't think. I'm like, if you go take a class with other people, like there's something about learning alongside other people, that when other people are doing stuff, you start getting ideas too. And one thing that I'm fascinated by to this day is that people tend to stick with the people they learned with. And that's why you see Tina Fey and Amy Poehler do everything together.
Yeah.
It's because they took the classes together. They went through IO together. And then, Amy founded UCB. Tina Fey went off to SNL. As she was moving up there, she's like, you got to get Amy Poehler in here, and The State. I love The State. They all went to NYU together, and now they all do movies together. Wet Hot American Summer,
my favorite movie,
Stella, and they were all teenagers together when they learned to do it. And yeah, you just see this all the time. The people who came up together, who learned together, continue to do stuff together. And that's what happens in improv is you sign up, you take the classes, you grow alongside these other people, you become comfortable with each other, you develop your own group mind. And then once you graduate from the classes, it's okay, well, what are we going to do now? Well, I guess we'll just keep doing stuff together. And then you write a show together, you put up something together. But it's all the great comedy that has happened throughout history doesn't happen because a person is sitting home alone trying to think of the funniest thing ever. They're around other people and they create a dynamic together and it becomes something that's uniquely them. And it's, oftentimes that's the cure to writer's block. That's the cure to being stuck creatively is you just need to be doing things with other people and then something will happen.
I love that. My musical improv group just did that. We took a class together and then that was January last year. We finished in February, and then March we started our group, and we've had now 2 shows, and we're kind of working on our format of the shows, but it's been really fun to see that develop and do a class with people and then keep growing and going together.
Yeah, you need to be able to be comfortable with who you are. One thing that I feel non-improvisers don't get about improv is like they see what I'm doing out on LinkedIn. And I have had a lot of people who will straight up tell me, they're like, I'm just copying what you're doing on LinkedIn. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Shoot me some credit. But some people go out there and they see me doing comedy and then they write comedy too. But they come at it from this perspective of, I'm going to find something I don't like and I'm going to make fun of it. And that's going to be the comedy. I'm going to make fun of this thing that I think is stupid. And I'm like, no, actually, what I learned in improv was you have to like embody the thing. And I have a lot of characters that came from my sketch improv background. I've got a character named Boss Bogue, which is like a angrier, more vulgar version of me in a suit and tie, kind of like a more Donald Trump-like version of me. And then I have a superhero named Vague Man, who is...
I do like Vague Man. I've seen Vague Man, yeah.
Yeah, Vague Man was an improv note that I would get in college.
Oh.
Vague Man was... That actually came from... I was taught in improv... Have you ever done an exercise called 3-line scene?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for anybody listening at home, the idea is in an improv scene, by the time you're 3 lines deep into a scene, the audience should know, like, where are you? Who are you to each other? And what are you doing here? And the opposite of that is what we call a talking head scene, where it's just 2 people talking about whatever. And whenever we would get past 3 lines into a scene and we wouldn't establish where we are or who we are or what we were doing, somebody would stop the scene and they'd go, hey, Vagueman, who are you? Where are you? What is this place? Why do we care? And they would continue going. And I was like, oh, that's such a specificity. Being specific is it's an important part of comedy and it's an important part of business. So I'm like, I'll do a video about that. And I created this character named Vagueman, which is just me with an orange cape and I'm standing in front of a blurry background. And this is Vagueman. He's the new employee. And, the joke is just he's so vague. He's absolutely worthless. Nothing he says means anything. He is infuriatingly non-specific. But it took off. It worked. People were into it, And
it does work.
Yeah. But the trick is up there is I am trying to tap into the real vulnerability of like when I am Vague Man, that unwillingness to say anything specific comes from not wanting to say the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be up there and it's coming from that professional place of you want to say the professional thing and you don't want to offend anybody, or you don't want to say the wrong thing, or you don't want to say too much. And whenever I lean into it, people will send me a DM being like, man, that Bagman sketch just murdered me. Because I'm really like playing into the part of me that wants other people to like me and that is afraid of hurting somebody's feelings. And like the more I could tap into those real emotions, the harder the sketch slaps, and the takes that get rejected are the takes where I feel like I'm above it. And that was something that took me probably 20 years of yes-anding before I started to finally learn how to not be above the scene, like how to shut off that part of me that wants to protect my ego and be like, oh, I'm superior to what's going on here. The more you can play into the reality of the scene and your real feelings, the funnier it is. And I don't know, it was a progression where like when I was in my 20s, I tried to do a lot of like cynical, satirical stuff and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And in my 30s, I discovered that I'm a vulnerable person. And actually, what the audience thinks is funny is when I'm up here about to cry and when my eyes are welling up, and that part of me that's vulnerable and able to be hurt is actually really funny. And the more I could find opportunities to really be that in a scene, the more real it was, the more funny it was. And the more I was just trying to show the audience how intelligent I was, the more it wasn't funny. And it was just me trying to impress people, which is never impressive.
I feel all of that. I really needed to hear that too, because I'm about 3.5, almost 4 in my improv journey, and I could feel the cynicism. Like I've definitely been there in scenes, and I've seen other people do it. I've tried to impress people with it, and yeah, just be real, be vulnerable. I'm learning that now, but it takes a while. It takes a while to make that change and just be there in the scene. That was really helpful, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Again, this is a criticism of the long form improv that I share sometimes where it's, yeah, I've been to the shows where it's somebody up on stage, they've done a million improv shows, they're not dressed up, they don't even really seem to be they're just kind of like amusing themselves up there.
Yeah.
And, improvisers are guilty of this. This is a thing that happens, especially in long form improv in the city, where it's like, it's almost they think they're better than the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And this can also be kind of where we can talk a little bit too about how I started getting more into sketch comedy too, because improv is really this mindset of there are no mistakes. There's no time for mistakes. There's no time to think twice. There's no time to look back. You have to accept your partner unconditionally. That's the only way this thing works. And when you start writing shows, when you start doing written sketch comedy, it's the opposite. You have to kill your darlings. You have to be very critical about your jokes. And, it can be a very emotionally difficult thing for people if you're not able to separate your ego from the process. But yeah, you have to be really asking yourself, is this serving the audience? Is this fun for the audience? And it's one of those things where it's, yeah, if you try out a sketch or even if you're doing like stand up and the audience didn't laugh, that's on you. Like that's your job, is to make a show that can be enjoyed. And yeah, I think like I did a lot of experimental improv and then we kind of got up our own asses. And then, yeah, it was kind of that transition to writing and trying to be like, no, let's try to make something that is like efficient and fun and real and interesting. But, this is ending number 5 because we tried the first 4 endings and they just didn't fit the scene, and we're trying to find the perfect way to like add a button on the end of the scene that's going to tie everything together.
What do you like better, improv or sketch, or you can't pick? They're just too different to pick a favorite.
I would actually say I'm probably more of a sketch performer.
Okay.
I'm one of those people who like, God, improv is so bad when it's bad. When you go to a show and it's just bad, and like the performers can't even comprehend that they're bad, so you just kind of feel embarrassed for them. That's an awful feeling. Like improv is, when it's bad, it's really bad. And like, yeah, I guess I'm kind of a control freak too. Have you ever talked about the head, the heart, and the X factor? Is that an LA thing that they talk about?
I mean, I know the pirate robot ninja. Is that the similar or different thing?
They say there's 3 different types of improvisers. You're either a
Okay,
head,
yeah.
you're a heart, or you're an X factor. So I think of myself as somebody who plays from the head.
Okay.
I'm a person who can't ever shut my mind off. I'm always thinking about like, where is this going? I'm thinking like thematically. Writers tend to be head players,
Yes.
So like Tina Fey is more of a head player. Harold Ramis, a lot of your writer types, you're a head player. A heart is somebody who plays from the heart. These tend to be the audience favorites. Chris Farley was a heart player. John Candy. I played with a lot of people who like, it's not that they are saying anything extraordinarily clever. I think people who play from the head are very clever. People who play from the heart just have a presence about them.
Yeah.
People just like them. People just want to be around them. They warm your heart. And then the X factor is like the weirdos.
The wild cards.
Yeah, the wild cards. Think like a Will Ferrell. Think, what's his name? Tim Robinson.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure.
I would say, yeah. These are agents of chaos. John Belushi was an X Factor. And yeah, these are people who kind of like defy the rules. They play chaotically. They're a really weird, one-of-a-kind type of energy. And you never know quite what they're going to do. And it's interesting to see how they play off the normalcy of somebody who plays from the head or somebody who plays from the heart. So I cherish X Factors. I am not an X Factor. I am much more of a cerebral player. And I think that's why I gravitate more towards sketch. X Factors, I think, lend themselves a lot to stand-up comedy as well. They have such a weird, unique point of view that it can really just be them kind of riffing out there. Whereas, yeah, I feel like a lot of times people who play from the head find themselves perfectly comfortable in the writer's room. And heart players are more like, it's all about how you relate to other people and how you bounce off to other people, which describes me sometimes. But more than anything, I have a hard time shutting off my mind. And I still do.
I'm definitely, from those 3 categories, I'm definitely a head player as well. I'm always in my head thinking and judging, getting better at that, of the not judging and just going. But I will say I'm a lazy head player in that I love improv because you show up and you perform. Yes, you practice and such, but sketch writing is so much work, right? Like you mentioned, there's 4 to 5 different iterations and you've got to let go of your darlings and just make changes, even though you think it's the funniest thing ever. If it doesn't land, you've got to be willing to change. So I haven't quite developed that sketch writing muscle yet, but I want to. I admire people who do.
I mean, improv is the first step. I mean, that's kind of Second City's whole thing is you improvise and then you re-improvise the scene and then turn it into a sketch. And famously, their improv jams after the show, sometimes they sneak little early versions of sketches in to see how they play in front of an audience.
That's cool. That's a good idea. Well, and Chris, so you're an applied improv trainer as well. So you lead improv trainings for businesses, teams, corporations. So what skills do you mostly focus on in your trainings for companies and teams?
Yeah. So when I am teaching an improv exercise, I have a couple goals. First and foremost is creating a safe space free of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So the number one thing I did, this is a thing I learned when I joined the improv mafia in college, and this is a thing I do. I say to my coaching clients, this is a thing when a company hires me to come in and do an improv training. The first thing I do is I have everyone breathe with me. I say, let's all take a deep breath in. Now breathe out the need to be funny.
Oh, I love that.
Take a deep breath in, breathe in your need to impress people. Now breathe it out. You know, you do not need to impress people. You do not need to make me laugh. And then the whole exercise is usually designed around playing games and playing exercises where they have to speak quicker than they can think. And we do a lot of conducted story or one-word story or rant or games like that where if someone points to you, you have to say the next thing. You don't have enough time to pre-plan what you're going to say. And yeah, it's really getting them comfortable and being like, hey, the goal is not to make people laugh here. It's to listen and to speak truthfully and to say the first thing that comes, speak from your honest perspective. And a lot of times we'll do like monologue type games where you have to say a truthful monologue. And again, my whole goal as a trainer is, can I get everybody speaking? Can I get everybody moving? Can I get people doing physical things? And can we do it in a way where there's no time to think? There's no time to think about what's the funniest thing that I'm going to say. I have to just say something, anything. And then the fun of it is it ends up being way funnier that way. When you don't have time to think and you just say the thing, you discover all these little wonderful moments that weren't designed to be funny. But that's really what comedy is. Comedy is, I believe, it's the gap between what people think they're supposed to feel and what they actually feel. And so often in stand-up comedy, that's really what the setup is. You have a comedian on stage saying, hey, I know when blah, blah, blah happens, you're supposed to do this, but here's what I actually do. And then the audience laughs because they go, oh, that's actually what I do too, you know?
Yeah.
And it always exists in the gray area. And that's where the idea of honesty comes in, where it's, no, I don't care that you've seen this joke before. And you know that if you say this certain thing, you're likely to get a reaction from the audience. If you actually say the thing that's 100% honest, that often gets an even bigger laugh because the audience goes, oh, I thought I was the only one who did that. Yeah, I thought I was the only one who reacted that way. And then they laughed because they're in on the joke too now. You know, they're in on the reality of it. And yeah, more and more when I go out there, it's always just like, how do you say the thing that's true rather than saying the thing you think the audience wants to hear? Because you learn in improv, the audience doesn't actually know what they want. They think they want to watch people pretend to have sex, and that's not actually what they want. They will always yell the sexual thing. And even if you take that as the suggestion, go take it somewhere honest and somewhere real, because actually it's going to be awkward to watch a bunch of weird improvisers pretend to have sex. That's actually not what anybody wants.
I am reliving my musical improv level 2 class show where we got the suggestion orgasm. And yeah, I mean, some people took it in different fun directions. And yeah, some other scenes were quite awkward too. So I feel that one. Yeah.
And that's also a bit of a crutch. Like the reason why audience members yell that is because if you're the type of person who wants to get a laugh, you learn very early on that the easiest way to get a reaction out of your audience is to startle them by saying something offensive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a cheap laugh.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, you're in trouble. That doesn't work on me. If a comedian goes up there and just says the most offensive thing they can think of, I don't get offended easily. You know, I was telling offensive jokes when I was 10 years old. I've heard it before, so if you say something offensive to me, it's not going to get a reaction out of me. I'm actually just going to look like, oh God, this is going to suck. This person has nothing. Whereas again, if you're up there doing something that's real, it's actually much more delightful. And this is something I learned in improv and this is another reason why I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn only understands two emotions, right? They only understand, I used to be poor and my life was so hard and I used to blah, blah, blah. But now look how rich I am. And it's a big smiling selfie of them in their beautiful home, and those are the only two reactions that they hone in on. And I'm like, actually, there's millions of other reactions that you can go out there in that are just as interesting. If I'm surprised by something, or I'm like fascinated by something, or I'm confused by something, or, the more honestly I lean into that, the more interesting it is at the top of the scene, because they're like, oh, what's this guy so amused about,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing you learn in improv is like there's a million ways to yes and. I was always taught no matter what the other person says to you, you can lean into it or you can lean away from it. If somebody comes up to a scene and they start touching my face and being like, oh, hey, did you trim up the beard here? You're looking handsome today. I can either be like, oh, thank you so much. I'm glad you noticed. I'd be like, yo, actually, I'm good. No, it's just my beard. No need to touch me. Both of those are correct.
Right.
As long as I acknowledge what the other person actually did. And then again, it's if I want to find that version of me that is flattered and that is susceptible to flattery, I got to really play it as honestly as possible. Or if I want to do the opposite, if I want to be the don't touch me person, I got to lean into my real issues of intimacy and fear of being touched. And either choice is correct, but you've got to pick one and you've got to commit to it and you've got to do it honestly.
I love all this. I'm soaking it up because these are all great tools to have in your improv toolbox. And also, as you're getting out onto LinkedIn and in the business world, you can use the ideas of yes and commitment and being vulnerable and being yourself in front of your audience of coworkers and your prospects and such. So I don't know, all this just applies and translates so well into work and life. And Chris, I want to ask you more about your video coaching and getting on video. That is why I have you here. I could use up all your time asking you more improv tips, but let's take a quick break. And I want to jump into video content and how to have a better video stage presence. So we'll be right back. And we're back talking with Chris Bogue about all things improv and sketch comedy and Chicago and comedy in general. It's been so much fun. And now I want to jump into the real reason why I had Chris on, not just to nerd out about improv, but also to ask him all kinds of questions about video presence and selling on video. So Chris, you have a number of different coaching offerings. You have getting on camera, selling on camera, sales coaching, video content coaching. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to put your coaching hat on because I've got a lot of questions for you. And the first one, there you go. Yep, putting it on. The first one is, I will admit that I don't feel super comfortable on camera. Now, doing this interview, we are on camera. I'll release some podcast clips. It's a conversation. Totally fine. But when I've got to sit in my room and record by myself and talk to the camera, I become mush and I have to do so many takes. So how do you coach those people who are not so gung-ho about getting on video off the bat?
So it starts with just looking at the camera.
Okay.
It sounds obvious, but like right now, you and I are having a video call. And anybody who's ever been on a Zoom call, typically what people do is they look at the faces of people that they're speaking to.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually a bad thing to do when you're making video content because you don't realize it. But when you're looking at yourself on the screen, your eyes are going to make these little micro movements. And that reads to the audience like nervousness. So the first step to making great video content is you never take your eyes off the lens. So the audience is looking at this right now. It looks like I'm looking at you, Dayna, or it looks like I'm looking at them at home. I am actually staring directly into the green light next to the camera lens. And yeah, that's actually a big note I give people for video content is do not watch yourself in the reflection. Do not watch yourself on camera. What you were trying to do is you were trying to simulate natural eye contact. So camera lens has to be at eye level. And your goal is to talk to them like you're sitting across the table from them having coffee. And I coach people to do video for sales because I hate cold calling. And all you got to do is show up for 30 seconds. And what I tell all my clients is, I understand that you're the only person on camera, but think of this as a 2-person scene.
Okay.
I always think of my solo camera stuff as a 2-person scene where I am not the main character. I am the supporting character, and the camera is actually the main character. And the difference between what I'm doing on LinkedIn and a lot of what LinkedIn content creators are doing is I talk to the camera like it's my friend. You know, like it's a person who's sitting across from me and we're having a conversation. And this goes back to the whole yes and mindset. But I was always taught in improv, make your partner look good. You know, it's not about you. You're not up there to get laughs for yourself. You're there to serve the scene. You know, so when I am making a video for sales, that recipient, they are the main character of the scene. I am just here to support them. And this is another thing too, because this is a difference between me and a lot of other LinkedIn trainers. There are other LinkedIn trainers who will teach you to be funny, quote unquote, and they teach you to write humorous cold calling scripts and punchlines and all that. And that's not what I do. I actually, when I send a 30-second sales video to somebody, it's actually more useful for me if they feel like they're the one that's funny. And I'm the one who's laughing at them. And I bring that yes and mindset into when I'm making a video. If I'm making a video for somebody, like a direct video that I'm making because I want a VP of sales to hire me to come in and train their team or something, I would be better off starting by reacting to a joke that they made rather than making my own joke.
Oh,
So I'd be like, hey, Dayna, I'm reaching out because that was a funny joke you made. I thought that was hilarious, you know, and I wanted to ask you something. And it's, they don't know who I am. I wish they would Google me because I work very hard on my stuff. Nobody Googles anything.
Right.
If you're talking for 10 seconds and you sound smart, they're like, oh, this person must be smart. And yeah, if you're interested in the other person, they're like, well, they're interested in me. This must be a nice, responsible, professional, respectable person, you know? So it always starts with them. And for the video content, you know, I'm very keyed into the first 3 seconds of the video.
Okay.
On TikTok, it's more like the first half second of the video. Like you have literally a moment's notice whether or not you're going to hook them or not. Somebody, and you can all see this yourself. Anybody who's listening to this episode right now, like how many times do you just scroll through your feed, watch something for 20 seconds? It's not even that you disliked it. I'm like, oh, baby koala, you know, cool. And then I keep scrolling, right? It wasn't that it was a bad video of a baby koala. It was like, I am scrolling through so many different messages at any given time. Even if I like something, I'm probably not going to stop and park on it. I'm certainly not going to comment and click the like button. Like that takes so much more. So I'm always starting with like, when somebody has to make video content, there's always one purpose. I always say, what's the one thing this video is going to accomplish? Maybe that's one thing you want to teach the audience, one idea that you want to communicate. Oftentimes, it's trying to get the audience to feel one thing by the end of the video. And then it becomes a question of like, how can we pull them into that within the first 3 seconds? And again, this goes back to what we were talking about in the first half of the interview here about that 3-line scene.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with that one line of dialogue, with that one attitude you bring into the camera, maybe there's text on screen, maybe there's a sound effect, maybe I'm doing something interesting with how it's shot. But within that first instant, I gotta let them know, hey, there's something going on here that you want to check out. And from there, and this is actually where it's going to get terrifying, so I don't want to freak anybody out here. But I was always taught on YouTube that like every 5 to 10 seconds you can lose your audience. And
that is terrifying.
You can't think of it as just one 1-minute video. You actually got to think of it like a collection of like short 5 to 10 second moments. And every moment pulls you into the next moment. So it's this interesting thing where I teach people to make video content. The goal is not only to make it entertaining and educational and useful, but can you also make it evergreen? Can you make something that you could repost 6 months from now and it will still work? And yeah, that's kind of the fun part is I've repurposed a bunch of my stuff numerous times. And every time I repurpose it, it gets a little shorter. There's always some moment where I'm like, this sentence is redundant. I can pull them out of here. Oftentimes I will have a funny video that fails. And when I try to think about why did this fail, I go back and I look at it and I go, oh, the first line of dialogue didn't grab their attention. I waited too long. It took 6 seconds before they saw my face and really got to what this video was about. And yeah, you kind of can't get too attached to anything, but it always comes back to what does the audience need to feel? What do they need to understand? And how can we give them that and not much else than that? And the actual problem with human beings is not that they have nothing to say. It's that they say 200 brilliant things throughout the course of the day. And actually, if you had just said this one thing that was 10 seconds long, that would have been plenty. And a lot of what I'm doing as a video coach is I'm taking longer materials they've done. Maybe they've got a 7-minute video on their homepage, or they've got a 5-minute Kickstarter video or something. And I go through and I review it and I go, okay, at the 3-minute 17-second mark, you had this really nice little casual aside to the audience. That's going to be the start of the video now. This is going to be a 20-second video, and you're going to pull them into this interesting real moment, and you're going to give them this one thing, and then that's going to be it. And if it fails, who cares? But if it doesn't fail, we're going to give your audience more of that. That topic, that point of view, whatever it is, we're going to revisit that. And it kind of goes to this idea in improv. I was always taught there's no penalty for editing the scene too early.
Right.
If you run in and cut the scene and your fellow improviser wanted it to keep going, it's fine, because they can always come back to that scene later. They can always come back out as that character. They can revisit that location. You can call back to that joke. You can always bring back the bits that were successful. What you can't undo is if the scene goes for too long.
Right.
And it loses momentum, it loses energy. Other people are coming onto the scene to try to salvage it. That's when the audience can tell something went wrong, But if you get a big laugh and you just wipe the scene, the audience is going to clap because it ended on a big laugh. And you can always return as that character. You can always bring that joke back later. And I bring that same attitude to video, where it's like video is an asynchronous thing, but the fact that I'm creating video all the time and I pay very close attention to my analytics means it's kind of like improvisation, where it's like you're getting that feedback of whether or not it worked. And then it's just a question of, okay, did I screw something up? Was something unclear? Did I get too clever? Did I need to get to the point faster? And a lot of my most successful videos have been second versions of things that bombed. So
okay.
one version out there. It does okay. It doesn't quite perform at the level I want it to. I take a second attempt at it. I make it shorter. I make it more fun. I retool a character. I lean harder into the theme. And then second version blows up and goes viral. And that's actually when I do cohort coaching, when I'm doing video content coaching, if I'm doing like a 3-month plan or something like that. That's actually one of the things we do is in month 3, we go back and we redo a concept that they tried 2 months ago. And oftentimes that second version is the one that blows up.
So do you use a lot of improvisation in your videos? Do you recommend to your clients to write out a script and then say it fully, or kind of write out an outline and then talk it through? How do you coach your clients to look natural but also be very efficient with their words?
It's a good question. At the very least, you should write the hook.
Okay.
You should write that first sentence.
Yeah.
Think of that first line of dialogue as the trailer for the rest of the video. If they like that one line of dialogue, if they're intrigued by that one line of dialogue, they'll be like, okay, where's she going with this? Let's see. And they'll watch. If that first line of dialogue doesn't connect with them, they're not going to watch it no matter how brilliant it is. So I always say, figure out that line of dialogue. Again, think about it like improv. Think about that one line. And, there's a joke in improv where beginning improvisers are always really clunky about how they do this. They'll be like, well, we've been brother and sister for how long would you say? 17 years? And, when you said this, and they just kind of explain what they're feeling. Whereas like when you start the scene by going, knock it off, sis, leave me alone, you've just communicated the same thing, but much more efficiently. The audience understands your attitude towards the other person. They understand this is a brother-sister scene. You didn't have to say, well, I've been thinking about our brother-sister relationship, blah, blah. You go, sis, give me back my Hot Wheels. I've asked you nicely. Just give them back, and then you can decide.
Show, don't tell. Yeah.
Yes. So it's come up with that first line of dialogue. And actually, my hack that I give people, if you want to be really efficient, I say, open up Google Docs, go to the tools, and right next to word count and spell check, there's a tool called voice typing.
Oh.
And what it does is it turns on your microphone, it turns on a transcription, and you can just talk into the microphone. So oftentimes what I've done is that's my first draft, is I sit down, I tell people if the blank page is driving you nuts, turn on Google voice typing. You start with that first strong line of dialogue, and then you just talk through the premise for 2 minutes. And then I'm a big paper and pen guy. I was always taught you'll get a better read out of actors if you actually hand them a paper script as opposed to having them read it off their phones. I print out a lot of stuff, and I was always taught it's a lot easier to write when you have a first draft that you can cross things out and write notes in the margins and everything. So oftentimes that's how I recommend people to script their videos. Another thing that I have them do is write in bullet points. So the bullet points are super useful because, again, if you're thinking about your 1-minute video as a series of moments, now you're thinking about each line individually. And what the bullet points allow you to do is it allows you to stay on message while still staying flexible enough to improvise, So yeah, it's once I print out that first nasty draft, I can cross things out, whatever. But by the time I make that second draft, it's a bunch of bullet points. It's a strong first line of dialogue. And then each one is kind of its own moment, And another thing I learned, just if anybody ever checks out my stuff on LinkedIn, by the way, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm friendly. I love talking about this stuff all the time. Yeah. So I do a lot of sketches, and I have a show that I promote, and I will have people come on, and I will write a comedy sketch, and I'll have the other person record their lines into a phone or into their camera, and then I splice it together. I splice them in with me and me doing multiple characters and music and backgrounds, and I do things in front of green screens and stuff, and I turn it into a scene. And I learned that the best thing you can do is treat it like you're an actor doing a voiceover gig. And what I mean by that is I try to do each line 3 different ways, and I just keep the version that's best.
Oh, okay.
And especially for comedy, there are all these rejected videos I have. I mentioned I have a character named Boss Bogue, who is just a louder, angrier, more vulgar version of me.
Yeah.
And that's the version. He's very much played like an old-timey, kind of stereotypical cigar chomping kind of boss. I also have a rejected cut of me doing it as a Mark Zuckerberg impression.
Okay.
Because I literally didn't know which was better. I was like, there was the version where it was like suit, tie, crass, old-timey New York kind of stereotypical boss. And then I tried one where I was a Mark Zuckerberg type, where I was very no social skills, wearing a hoodie, doesn't exactly remember what this company does. And I just looked at them back to back and I'm like, okay, the old-timey version is just objectively funnier, you know?
Right.
And, you know, if the line is like, how you doing, Mom? I'll try being like, you know, hey, Mom, how's it going? Hey, Mom, how's it going? They're like, hey, Mom, how's it? You know, I'll give 3 different reads. And I've discovered that oftentimes the first take is the best. The first take is usually the best.
Really? Okay.
And also, the take that's the best is usually not the take where I'm pushing the hardest.
Uh-huh.
And this is also a transition that I went through when I was getting on video. This is a transition that I've had to help a lot of people through moving to video. I mentioned I did some television work in my 20s, and the first thing they did was I was doing my lines, and they're like, why are you yelling? I'm like, what? And it's these microphones that we talk into are so sensitive.
Right. Yeah.
And HD cameras are so sensitive. They capture all these little sensitive movements of the eyes and the mouth. And a lot of people are used to doing improv on a stage. Or if you're a sales trainer, if you're a sales boss, you're used to speaking in a room where there's 100 people and you've got to project, you've got to over enunciate, you've got to be very big with your gestures so the people in the back of the room can still hear you. And what I discovered getting on video is actually sometimes the take that's subtle is the one that's funny. And again, we mentioned Vageman, one of my characters, you know, oftentimes those little flashes of self-doubt or insecurity are what's funny. You know, the little subtle things that I'm doing are what get the laugh. And yeah, I kind of had to break out of it because I was always taught in theater, be bigger, be bigger, be bigger. And then, on video, I actually had to tone it down a bit. And, you know, I've discovered all these new opportunities where you can be more subtle with the role. But again, I'm asking myself, what kind of emotion do I want to pull the audience into? And yeah, sometimes I'm pulling them into a scene where I'm in trouble. You know, I'm like playing a guy who's like making a cold call and it goes badly. And it's, oh no, you know, and the audience is looking and they can see the fear in my eyes. They can see the shame and humiliation washing over my face. And that reality is what they're laughing at. You know, I guess that's a long-winded way of saying you got to go up on, just start trying stuff. And then when something works, you just do it again. You do it more. But the hardest part is getting started. And you can get over that by just turning on the microphone and talking about what you know for 2 minutes.
Well, and so you mentioned trying saying the hook or saying things 3 different ways. Do you recommend a certain number of takes? Because listen, okay, so I've got a story a few years ago, and I've gotten better. But like probably 3 years ago, my company was doing all these like little 2-minute videos where we got to talk about what our department did or like plug something. And I got asked to do a 2 to 3 minute video about our corporate Toastmasters club that I was president for at the time. And I shamefully will admit that 2 to 3 minute video took me a good 4 to 5 hours to make. One, because I couldn't edit it. So this is my excuse. Like I couldn't edit it. It had to go well all the way through. And so in my mind, I couldn't make any mistake. Like it had to be perfect. And so as I kept going, it was like by the third to fifth hour, like I was robotic at that point. I was just trying to like get through it without making any mistakes and saying every word perfectly. And I did a few takes. I think I had 5 that I was okay with. But the first one was the best one because then I started getting robotic at the end. So, do you recommend your clients like, okay, you get 3 takes, don't do any more, you go with whichever one you like? Any kind of recommendations there for the real perfectionists in the room?
Yeah, I'll say it's always going to take you too long at first.
Yeah.
Those early videos I did just drove me nuts because everybody does the same thing. There seems to be a progression video content creators go through where, like, first you're spending 4 or 5 hours trying to get it perfect. And then you realize nobody's even watching. So it doesn't
Uh-huh.
matter. And then here's what really changes things. So what really changes things is when you spend 2 weeks making the perfect video that bombs, and then you throw something out that you weren't even thinking about in 5
Uh-huh.
minutes, and then that's the thing that goes viral.
Yep.
That's what changes it. And the audience doesn't care how much work you put into it. They don't. I wish they did. They would like my stuff a lot more if they cared about how hard I worked on it,
We're
but they just care what's relevant to them. So my whole thing is first take always ends up the best. My kind of recipe for doing it is the camera doesn't stop. Keep the camera
okay.
going. And that's also like when I write sketches that people record their part for me asynchronously, I tell them, turn on the camera and don't stop it. Do as many takes as you want. You can start over again whenever you want, but just send me one video file and I will chop it up myself. Even then, it usually ends up the first line tends to be the best one. The second and third line, they're trying too hard. They're forcing the emotion too much. There is something magical about the first time. And yeah, don't overthink it is the goal. And that's why people hire me as a coach. They're overthinking it and they just need someone to be like, oh, that thing you said, that was good. Go start it there and we're going to write it. And it's going to be a 30-second video, but that line is gold. Go do it. And yeah, it's like I said, people create things together and video is no different. Oftentimes what people just need is a sounding board or an audience to be like, oh yeah, that was good. If you did that, that would be a good start to the video. They're trying to imagine a general audience that doesn't actually exist,
Mhm.
And yeah, that's a problem people get into is when you think too generic, what is the thing I could say that a million random people would like? You never get anything. Whereas when you visualize one specific person and think, what would I say to stop them, to get them to listen for 5 seconds? Suddenly you can find the words.
And do you recommend that they keep the video going and not pause it to get the right clip? Because once you pause it, you kind of start getting in your head, or you're like, I got to get this one right. And there's like higher stakes with that next video that you record.
Yeah. So it's funny because I'm writing a book about this. I'm on draft 2. But
Ah, first draft's always the best. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, not this one. No, so I call what I do soliloquy training. Soliloquy,
Okay.
if anybody at home doesn't have their freshman year of high school English book, a soliloquy is a Shakespearean term that means you're just breaking the fourth wall and you're talking directly to the audience. So Shakespeare did this, so did iCarly and The Office and Parks and Rec and Ferris Bueller. And there's a million of examples throughout history where it's a very effective thing to just talk directly to your audience. So I call what I'm doing soliloquy training because it's just you and your audience. And that's how you want to think about it. And for me, it's been a journey of saying, okay, video is not one thing. It's actually 10 different processes, and you got to take them one at a time. If you're trying to do all of them at the same time, you're going to get overwhelmed and it doesn't work. So when I am writing, I am only writing. I am sitting here in front of a Word document, and my job is to just get the thing done, write the first draft, Doesn't matter if it's garbage. Got to get a beginning, middle, and an ending done. When I am filming, I am the on-camera talent, and that's it. And again, I am thinking about it when I am reading a script. Can I give 3 distinct readings for each line? I'm not worrying about editing. That's going to be my job, later on when I'm putting on my editing hat. For now, my job is I have the script. How can I get the best read possible? How can I get the best energy? How can I get the most honest read? How can I get the most emotionally resonant read? Whatever it is, when that camera is filming, I'm not fiddling around with controls. I'm not editing it. I'm not making perfect. I am the actor now. How can I give the best performance possible? And then afterwards, it's okay. I've got this footage. This is the footage I have. Now I've got to put that director hat on. I've got to put that editor hat on and say, objectively, which one of these is the best? Which of these lines is the most natural? If it's a comedic sketch, which of these lines do I think is the most funny? And then after that, I hand it off to the social media guy or the promoter or whatever. And now that's just, okay, the video is what it is. How can I package this in the way that's most likely to get people to watch it or share it or comment with it or whatever? But I really try to break those functions up, and I really try to only focus on one at a time, and as an entrepreneur, this looks a lot like you got to make lists, you got to have tasks, you got to have workflows. But yeah, when I am being the on-camera performer, I am not thinking about anything other than how can I give the 100% best read possible? And editor Chris is going to deal with that tomorrow or 6 hours from now or whatever. And then, yeah, it's kind of learning how to be the one-man show, quote unquote. And, when you watch a movie, there's a giant list of credits at the end. And these are all people who have different jobs. And most people aren't the writer and director and editor and social media. But you do have to be that if you are your own brand, so
Right.
Give yourself some space. If you try to do all 5 of those functions together, they're not going to work. Set time to write, set time to film, set time to edit, set time to do the social. If you treat them as 5 different jobs, you can get each of them done 20 minutes or 30 minutes at a time. If you try to do it all in one sitting, it's going to take 5 hours long and it's not going to get done and you're going to hate yourself by the end of it.
And you're going to be so embarrassed that it took 5 hours to do a 3-minute video, and you're going to not want to tell people that for a few years and then finally admit it later. But there's always room for improvement, right? Which is why you get help from people who know what they're doing.
And you just do it more.
Yeah, because that's what I was doing. I wouldn't practice, or I would kind of write it there and then, or I write it as I talk, and I'm I don't really know what I'm going to say, so it's not very efficient. So I like that segmenting it. I'm going to write it out, then I'm on camera now. This will be for the editing person later. I really like that, and I've not been doing that. So thank you for that tip there. So question though, for those who aren't that tech savvy, or they're well, I don't have an editor and I don't know how to edit, so I feel I gotta get the video right on the right take. I mean, is that still possible, or do you recommend editing your videos to a certain degree?
Yeah, at the very least, you want the video to begin the moment sound starts coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
So there's something called the millennial pause.
Yes, that came up in another episode.
Yeah, where it starts with them being
I don't even notice that, though, in videos. That's still going on?
Yeah, that still happens. And again, people don't want to think of themselves as scripted, but I would argue that most people are scripted, even if they don't realize it. We have the same stories we tell over and over again. We have the same lines we tell over and over again, and we ask each other the same questions over and over again. And I've seen videos where the person says thank you 6 times because they're just kind of rambling, and they're oh, thank you for watching this, blah, blah, blah. Thank you for checking out my channel, this and this. I'm if you had actually sat down as a writer, you would have probably said, you know what, we could just say thank you once or 0 times. But it's like you weren't choosing your words up there. You were just trying to get a perfect video done in one take. And the recurring theme with me, it's mercifully short video content because less is almost always more, you know? And the irony too is I used to be a person who just talked and talked and talked and nobody ever listened to me. And then once I started doing the short video thing, all of a sudden I had a much bigger audience who was willing to listen to me for much longer and also willing to pay me much more money than I had ever made in my life. And yeah, it was one of those things where it's you give them 45 seconds and people were like, whoa, I really liked that. Now you can return to that topic. You can return to that point of view. You could say, okay, let's go one step deeper into this. Well, let's give a different perspective here, or let's take that step, one step further. Whereas if you just give them 5 minutes of you going all over the place, there's nothing for them to really latch onto.
Yeah.
So, and again, this is what I do for a living now. So many times people are like, oh, hey, here's my video. And I'm like, great. It's 7 minutes long. We're going to do the 60-second version of that. And the irony is they're not inventing anything new. The words are already there. We're just kind of stripping it out. And I was always taught in improv, it's not what you are saying, it's how you are saying it. The fact that you are doing something with intention is what the audience is drawn to. If I'm like sewing and I'm sitting there bobbing my head and smiling, versus I'm sewing, but I'm sitting there glaring at my husband, it's the same action, but I've given 2 completely different intentions. And no matter what, it's still the same result where you're 3 seconds into the scene. You're like, okay, well, he seems angry about something. Let's see what the deal is in this scene. And then wherever it's going to go, it's fine. But you have to give them something concrete right out the gate.
Well, and when you say mercifully short, do you have a threshold time? Like 20 seconds is the cutoff, 30 seconds is the cutoff? Or is it more just a feeling like it's going too long, you're starting to ramble now?
That's interesting. So, yeah, my whole thing is, and this is a thing in improv too, where people who've never done improv always ask the same kind of questions. They're like, is it really all improvised? You didn't work out any of that beforehand? It's no. And then the other question I always get is they go, how do the improvisers know when to edit? How do they know the exact moment to wipe the scene? And I tell them they know because the audience knows too. You can tell the audience knows because when the scene goes on for too long, everybody feels it. If you hit the edit moment at the right point, the audience claps and they laugh because you edited it on a high note. Like you got that laugh, you hit that button of the scene, and now everybody rushes onto the stage and wipes it. Now it's a new scene. The audience can tell when you miss the edit point. Oftentimes when I'm working with people, the first thing they tell me is, well, I hate watching myself on video. And I'm like, well, I got bad news for you because that's what we're doing today. And we sit and I watch the video with them and they squirm a little, but they squirm because there's a part of them that knows that they rambled, or there's a part of them that knows they took too long to get to the point. And before I give them any feedback, the first thing I do is I say, what were your reactions watching that a second time? And they know what's the issue. They're like, yeah, I feel like that rambled a little bit. I feel like it kind of took too long to get to the point. I feel like that first line was kind of awkward. And it's all right, well, let's just go do version 2 then. What would be a stronger way to open it? And again, oftentimes it's like you bury the lead or something. You bury the comedy 45 seconds in there. And I'm like, no, actually, you had this very relatable moment 45 seconds in. Let's start there. Let's pull the audience in immediately with this first line. And then what's the one thing we want to do with them? Do you want to teach them something? Again, maybe you want them to feel something. Sometimes you want them to feel good about themselves. You want them to feel understood. You want them to feel heard. You want them to feel like they can accomplish something they didn't feel like they could accomplish before. it doesn't matter what it is, but you got to be specific on where you're trying to take them. And if you do get them to feel one thing, congrats, because that's more than most anybody is going to get them to do. Like these people are avoiding text messages from their kids. They can't get their spouse to listen to them. They listen to you for 15 seconds. That's pretty good.
Well, the hook thing is very helpful too, because I've gotten asked recently to do a video on a workshop I was doing to help promote it so I could be on camera and talk about the workshop. And I think I started with, "Hi, I'm Dayna Gallon, and I'll be presenting the psychological safety workshop, blah, blah, blah." And I'm just thinking, wow, I probably missed some people there because it was kind of a boring intro. So, like, how do you bridge that gap between, like, interesting hook and then do you introduce yourself later? Would that be the better way to go? I know it depends on context.
Yeah, the audience loves a live moment. They love when there's a chance that something could fail. So, like, the example I always give in business is LinkedIn. We were talking about how I do stuff on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is famous for superficial people who are pretending to be successful when they're not actually successful, right?
Mhm.
So the example I give is I go, think about 2 videos and let's try to figure out which one does better. Video 1 is someone being like, "Hey, here's my 5 tips for hitting your quota in sales," right?
Mhm.
Video number 2 is a sales rep going, "Hey, the part of sales that I've always struggled with is making cold calls. I've never, ever been able to make 100 calls in a day. And I'm promising you that every day I'm going to make 100 calls. And at 5 p.m., I'm going to report back to you and tell you how it went. And if you could go ahead and drop some advice for what I could do to hit 100 dials in the comments, I could really use it. Thanks a lot." Which of those 2 videos do you think is going to do better? It's going to be number 2, because he's not coming in there being like, "Here's my 5 cold calling tips." The audience is like, "Who are you? I don't care what your cold calling tips are. I don't even know if you're good at cold calling." Whereas video number 2 made the audience part of the story.
Ah, okay.
And, I've done things where I am doing a breakdown of an improv workshop I did. And oftentimes what I'm doing is I'm picking like a moment from that work. Are you using footage in this that you've already shot, or is this just you talking about it?
It was like a pre-promo. So it was like, come to my workshop to, attend the workshop kind of thing.
Yeah, I always think, so for me, video and comedy and entertainment, really life is all about opposite energies. Think back to like really classic comedy, like Laurel and Hardy kind of stuff, Abbott and Costello. You've got a straight man and you've got a funny guy,
Yeah.
right? And the straight man is supposed to be as uptight as possible. The straight man is a fill-in for the audience. And then the comedy guy exists to like frustrate that person and to push their buttons. And it's like, the more outrageous the straight man is, the more outrageous the funny guy is, and the more straight the straight man is, the funnier it is, because you've got these 2 opposite forces clashing off of each other. So I play with that a lot of times when I'm doing a promo for something or an intro for something. So I'll do something, just maybe I'll be like, "Hey, we've got this improv thing coming up, next week. Why would anyone want to do improv?" Or I do a lot of my sketch comedy stuff. And like I explained to the audience, like we talked about Vague Man and stuff earlier. A lot of my comedy revolves around me being this very kind of eloquent, well-spoken narrator. And then I cut away to just utter nonsense. It's me in front of a ridiculous background and like 90s style graphics, and I'm wearing a cape. And it's like, the more ridiculous that cutaway is, the more you see that contrast when it comes back to me at the desk, And I've done stuff promoting my improv workshops where I kind of throw them into the middle of a funny scene. So I'll use footage of two people in the middle of a scene and it's funny and there's movement and stuff. And then it cuts to me at the desk being like, oh, by the way, we decided to do some improv this week. And you get that nice kind of oscillation between you see action, you see movement, and then it cuts back to me being the explainer at the desk. And this goes back to that idea we talked about of every 5 seconds, something is going to change. Sometimes that's a visual. Sometimes I'm cutting away to B-roll footage. Sometimes it's a change in emotion. Sometimes it's a sound effect. Sometimes there's on-screen text. Like there's all these different tools you can use to keep the audience's attention. But yeah, oftentimes I'm throwing something kind of exciting or maybe something confusing, or I like to throw my audience into the middle of a dilemma sometimes where it's, okay, pop quiz. This is happening. Should you do this or should you do that? Okay, well, I kind of found myself in this situation a couple days ago, and here's what I ended up doing. And you're 5 seconds into the video, but you've thrusted the audience into the middle of this scene where they're like, oh God, I don't know what I would do. I'm going to keep listening to what she has to say because I don't know what I would do here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm always kind of trying to ignite their curiosity and being like, yeah, so this week I'm going to go out there and do improv with business people. Is that a good idea? That seems like that could be a bad idea. Here's why I think it might be a good idea.
I love that.
And it's like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, into this thing where they're like, I don't know if she's right or wrong, but I'm going to follow along with her,
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of the fun part of it is like the audience loves failure. I was always taught in improv that the seduction scene that fails is actually the most entertaining one, where it's like the seduction is going well and then something throws it off and ruins it. That's actually the most entertaining scene. And it was like my first improv show in the city was called A Hair Away from Disaster. And that is the spirit I like to keep. There's something entertaining about feeling like, oh God, this could all fall apart. This could all be a complete disaster. Glad that's not me up there. I'm going to see how it goes. It's very enticing for the audience, and that's the fun part of being the person up there on video. You can play these multiple parts. You can be the comic energy and the straight man in both of them. And, that is a thing for solo video creators. I tell them you do have to play both parts of that. And I encourage people to kind of find the characters in yourself. You're not just you. You're also somebody's friend. You're somebody's daughter. Maybe you're somebody's mom. Maybe you're somebody's boss, and the more you find ways to like honestly lean into these different versions of you, the more you can play your own different energies off of each other. And again, it's the yin and yang, two opposing forces. That's what entertainment is built on. You kind of just got to find different ways to create that tension on your own when you're a solo video creator.
Chris, I love that. And I hope I could use that. I will use some of that, I think, in my next few videos. And this is a very personal to me question, but while you still have your coaching hat on. So I have this pod mom character that I've been trying to do on Instagram where like my podcast is my baby. I'm a pod mom and I'm so excited. And it's a way for me to talk about my podcast without just talking about the podcast. Because I find that to be really boring of like, hey, I've got a new episode out. Go check it out. But my pod mom character is always very excited and proud of their little baby podcast. And I think it's funny. I don't know if other people get it. I also haven't posted any videos in a while of it, but I'm not letting go of this character. So is this something to lean into and maybe just hone in more if I really like this character, but I'm not quite sure what direction to go with it?
I'm always a fan of the crazy characters, and I'm going to give the simplest feedback that might be the scariest thing that I've said all episode. You got to just ask people directly.
Yeah.
And when I started making video content, the first thing I did was every single person who clicked the like button, every single person who left a comment, I sent them a DM and thanked them personally. So thanks for interacting with my content. And if they said, hey, no problem, or hey, like I enjoy whatever, if they responded to me, I would say, hey, I'm trying to improve my content based on what my audience likes. Was there anything that stood out to you that resonated with you? Was there anything about the video that you liked or anything that stuck with you? And this was how I discovered that I could do sketch comedy on LinkedIn. Because when I started, I was not doing comedy. I was on a 3-year creative dry spell. I hadn't been on stage in years. It was COVID. All my friends lived in LA now. I thought I was never going to do comedy again. And it started kind of creeping its way in. I was doing like talking head kind of like explainer videos about sales.
Yeah.
And I would be describing how to make a cold call. And then it would cut to a really nervous version of me on the phone with a really impatient version of me. And when I would survey my audience and I was like, what stuck with you about it? They're like, whatever that was, where you cut away to the version of you on the phone, that was funny. And I would like to see more things like that. And the more I surveyed my audience, the more I realized that it didn't matter if someone was a VP of sales, if they were a corporate executive, if they were a chief revenue officer, if they were an actor or a video editor or somebody I used to do improv with or somebody who's a comedian out in LA, they were all saying the same thing. They were all like, whatever that thing was there, that was funny. And I would like more of that. And that was where I really learned that there was no penalty for this doing absurd sketch comedy on LinkedIn. Actually, quite the opposite. Serious people with good paying jobs that I never thought would be into something like this ended up being into it. And I ended up creating all sorts of new characters because they tested well with my audience. But yeah, you kind of just got to go ask directly. And worst case scenario, they're not going to respond. But yeah, actually, people will be into it. And, you know, this might be a frustrating thing, but it might also be an encouraging thing. As somebody who's going to be doing this this will be my 3rd year coming up next year. Oftentimes I'll get a client. Somebody will reach out to me and they'll hire me for a consulting gig or they'll hire me for individual coaching. And they're not even a first connection on LinkedIn. And they've never clicked the like button. They've never commented on my videos. And they'll reach out and they'll say, I've been following your stuff for years. I've been sharing your stuff. I sent one of your videos to my wife. I had no idea that they enjoyed it because they were not clicking the like button and they were not being like, oh my God, you're so funny. Because that's what most people do. Even if they enjoyed it, they don't click the like button. So yeah, when someone does interact with your content, appreciate that, thank them for that, start a dialogue with them, and get curious about what it is that stuck with them. And again, sometimes it's not the thing that you spent 5 hours making. Sometimes it was this little unintentional thing that kind of came out accidentally where they're like, yeah, you know what? You said this thing and I'm kind of a shy person and that kind of resonated with me. And, you know, if it's a real thing that landed with your audience, you can go out and do it again. You can do another video from that perspective. You can dig deeper into that perspective. And you'll never know if you don't ask.
That's helpful. Yeah. And that is also helpful to hear. Even if they're not liking and interacting, people are still seeing that. Like I hear that from friends. They're like, oh, I see that you're posting the podcast. You're doing so well. And I was like, oh, thanks. Like, and they don't usually interact with it or like it. So people see it. Even if you're not getting the likes, people are seeing it too. Although it helps the ego to see the likes.
Yeah. And honestly, save those videos, everybody. Save them because you can repurpose them. You can reuse them later.
Yeah.
I have had different versions of, you know, like I've posted a video and then I post it again 4 months later and it gets 3 times the reaction.
That's true.
You know, so like the example I heard about repurposing content is they're like, imagine you went and bought a really fancy outfit to wear to a dinner one night. And then you came home and threw it in the trash.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the only people who saw you wear it were the people who were at that one party that one night. And it's that same thing where like sometimes you make a video and then 20 minutes later, a celebrity dies. And then that's the only thing people were looking at that day. And they didn't even click on it. If you posted a different time of day, with maybe a different copy for the text, different day of the week, that might be a huge hit. You can't read too much into what happens with a video that nobody really reacted to. You just don't have enough information to determine whether or not it was good. You just got to go out there and keep doing stuff. And whenever you do get a reaction, cherish it, get curious about it, ask questions about it. I can leave your audience with one last thing. Don't ever delete the video just because it only got 5 or 6 likes.
Oh, no.
Yeah, people do that all the time. Sometimes you put a video out there and it doesn't perform at the level you wanted it to. And a week and a half later, somebody clicks the heart button. You go, oh, they got it. That's a fan. That person got it. Not everybody got it. That one person got it. Send them a DM. Be like, thanks a lot. I'm trying to improve the show. Could you share if anything about that stuck with you? If anything resonated with you? If you liked it? And yeah, sometimes you'll be surprised. Sometimes they picked up more than what you realized, but it comes with putting yourself out there and being vulnerable. And again, you kind of got to separate yourself from the person who wrote it, from the person who was on camera, from the person who edited it. Your job right now is to be the person who collects feedback, and it's not a reflection on you. It's not a reflection on them. You got to just see what landed. And once you find something that lands, go give them more.
I'm dabbling in stand-up right now, but I have a stand-up bit about more than zero. I didn't know what to expect with the podcast, so whenever I get more than 0 listens or downloads, I'm always excited. And I get more than 0, but that's my whole bit of like, we should live a more than 0 life. Like, I worked 2 hours today at work, more than 0. I got 10 minutes of exercise, more than 0. So that's my whole mindset with likes and stuff. More than 0 there.
Yeah. Stuff doesn't mean nothing. And again, if you're doing this for business, anybody who's doing this for business, it's like, if you're charging a few $1,000s or a few tens of thousands of dollars or whatever it is you're charging, you don't need that big of an audience. You don't need millions of people to like it. And actually, I do a lot of different types of content. When I'm doing something that's funny and attention grabbing, I'm trying to go for the biggest audience possible. But oftentimes I make videos that I know aren't going to have a big audience. I'll make videos about niche parts of the video creation process. One thing I learned as a business owner is I'll make content about like how to create better subtitles and how to do better captions. And those videos don't get nearly as much love as my crazy comedy videos. But when somebody likes one of those videos about captions, that tells me, oh, this is somebody who's getting into the video process. This is somebody who's trying to do it better. And oftentimes those low performing videos that are focused on a real specific part of the process that I'm trying to teach them about, those are the videos that turn into clients that will shell out 5 figures for a consulting package or whatever, So small audiences are a gift, and all the important decisions in life tend to happen in small rooms. Comedy is a very in the moment kind of thing. The best comedy is the joke that you had to be there for, because it has a very short shelf life, So embrace those small rooms, play to your people. It doesn't have to be for everybody. It just has to be for your audience.
Well, Chris, I am feeling more inspired to keep with the pod mom character and also just get on video more while you still have the coaching hat on. Any lasting tips for our listeners on the video creation process?
Absolute morons go out there and do this every day, so why not you? I will end with one I'm not calling this woman a moron. She's actually brilliant. There is a woman on TikTok who has millions of followers. And her angle is she teaches you how to make buttered noodles.
Okay.
She's literally like, first buy a box of dry noodles, then boil it for 10 minutes, and then add butter and Parmesan cheese and salt and pepper and serve it to your guests. She shows you how to make buttered noodles, and she has millions of followers. because there are people out there who don't know how to make buttered noodles. And she doesn't go out there saying, I'm a 5-star chef. I work at a Michelin star restaurant. She doesn't go out there pretending to be something that she's not. She goes, hey, these are cheap meals that I make for my family, and I'm going to share them with you. And she has a great following, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to say the most brilliant thing ever. Go out there and say what's true. And 99% of people out there are doing 0 video content. So doing literally anything will put you into that top 1%. Like, go out there, and if some absolute moron can make money with his YouTube pranking video out there in Los Angeles, surely you can go out there and say something intelligent. If some absolute monster can go out there and say absolute stupidity and do okay for themselves, you could say something decent or something real or something intelligent. Worst case scenario, people are going to scroll past, but you might surprise yourself. Somebody out there is probably going to like it.
I feel way more motivated. Okay, I'm going to work on this. Do you recommend people do it like once a day, at least once a week, if they're trying to get more videos? I promise this is my last question.
Yeah, I say ask yourself what's your ceiling and what's your floor. Your floor, so like when I started making videos, my floor was 2, my ceiling was 4. What that means is if I get 2 videos out this week and I stop, I can still feel good about myself because I did what I said I was going to do. I got at least 2 out.
Okay.
If I get 4 videos out, I can party. I can go get myself a nice dinner. I can spoil myself with some me time. If I hit 4 videos, I'm going to celebrate, right? And I can stop there and I can feel good about it. And what's going to happen is over time, if it's too easy to hit your ceiling, you got to raise your ceiling and you got to raise your floor, right? And if the opposite happens, if you keep falling through the floor, you need to lower your floor and you need to lower your ceiling, right? And maybe that means your floor is 1 video and your ceiling is 2. That's fine. Pick your floor, pick your ceiling, make sure you don't fall through the floor every week. I think a floor of 2 and a ceiling of 4 is perfectly fine. That's what I did. I know TikTokers who do 7 videos a day.
Oh my gosh.
I know people who do
It's
1 or 2
exhausting.
videos a month. Yeah, it's really all up to you. But find your floor, find your ceiling, and consistency is your friend.
Okay. My floor is 1. My ceiling is 2. That's what I'm starting with for the week. 1 for the week. And I can only go up from there. And I like that. That feels doable. That feels successful too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you got your 1. And then, hey, and that's where you get into the moment where you're like, I just got to get 1 out this week. This one that I wanted to do is too complex. I'm just going to go talk about this for 30 seconds. And then that's the one that freaking goes viral. And you're like, oh my God. All right. Well, that's good because I guess I'll just talk more about this thing because I guess there's hunger for that, But yeah, pick your floor, pick your ceiling. Does not matter what number you choose. Just pick a number and people surprise themselves, and you end up having fun. And if you're a good performer on stage, there's absolutely no reason why you wouldn't be good on video too.
Chris, thank you so much for all these coaching tips. I needed to hear them. I think, for those listening who are trying to just have a better video presence, this was so helpful. Where and how can our listeners interact and find out more about you?
Yeah, so the best way to interact with me is to connect with me on LinkedIn. Look up Chris Bogue. I'm easy to find. You can also subscribe to my podcast. So my podcast is called Chris Sells His Soul. You can get it wherever you get podcasts. So Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, wherever you like to get podcasts, I should be there. You can also find me on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok. But yeah, LinkedIn is my primary channel. And my show, Chris Sells His Soul, it's all about the creative process. It's how do you monetize your creative skills? How do you put yourself out there consistently? How do you do sales and business as a creative person? So yeah, check it out. And thanks for having me on the show, Dayna.
I enjoyed every minute of it, Chris. Any shows to plug coming up in 2024 in the Chicago area? Or are you mostly focusing on your business right now?
Yeah, well, the goals for 2024 is publish the book. And I'd like to produce
Yes.
another live show. So yeah, that's draft 1 is done. I've never written a book before, so it's taken a minute, but that's my goal for 2024. So you can hold me to that. Just be like, how's the book coming? I'll be like, oh,
I've got this clip now. I could post it.
yeah, shame me with it.
Or it's not a shame, it's a nudge. It's like, how's it going? And then when you release the book, I can use this clip and be like, look, you did it, Chris. I'm already planning ahead.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's something I wanted to do all my life. So
does it have a title? Are you willing to share, or it's still a working title?
The book is called Soliloquy.
Oh, and, lovely.
I'm still trying to figure out the tagline, but I'm thinking it's not your business, it's the show.
Ooh.
That's kind of my whole philosophy is I don't have a business. I have a show. I don't have prospects or customers or clients, or I have an audience that can tune in at any time of the day. And this is how I coach my clients too. It's you're going to go out there and do the Dayna show in the way that only you can do it. What do you want the audience to see when they tune in? And that's why sometimes the show is funny. Sometimes it's educational. Sometimes it's inspirational, motivational, education, whatever it is, but it's always me. And yeah, that's how I view it. And again, the show is kind of like what we talked about. Like, you've got to start a business out of nothing. You got to start a brand out of nothing. You have no accomplishments. You have no presence. You have no fan base. How do you break these up? How do you be the writer and the on-screen talent and the director and the editor and the producer and the sales and the distribution and the social media? And yeah, it's a lot. You got to take them one role at a time. And it's the story of how my life kind of fell apart. And I thought I was done doing comedy forever. And instead, I started a business and had more fun in my life than I've ever had before, and rediscovered all these talents and hobbies I had that I thought I was done with forever. Suddenly, they became much more lucrative because I decided that they were important finally. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Soliloquy. Keep an eye out for it.
Good pitch of the book. I can't wait to read it. I will definitely buy a copy. I'm sold. I want to read it. That sounds amazing. Chris, you are so full of knowledge and inspiration. I feel so inspired to get out and improve my video presence and improve my business presence. Like you said, like treating it like a show. I love that mindset. So eternally grateful for you coming on today, sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us all. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening to today's episode. Are you feeling inspired to get on video more and embrace your video presence more? I hope you are. I know I am. I've got a few ideas for Podmom and other videos too. So I just love this episode. Feeling really moved by this one. So I hope you're feeling that too. And reach out to Chris if you have any questions or want to check out his offerings. He's super knowledgeable and has lots of great tips that can help with any kind of video presence you're trying to establish. And for those who are listening going, I don't do a whole lot of video content. Why would I need video content? I think it comes up more than you think. It's kind of the same thing as public speaking. Like, even if you're not a speaker, a quote unquote speaker, you always get asked to speak in meetings or presentations or at work or wherever you're at. Like, public speaking comes up everywhere. And I think video content comes up too more than you think. I don't actively search out or actively want to get on camera that much. However, I get asked to do video clips for work, for my Toastmasters group, or now I am getting up and speaking more and I get asked to do a promo video. And there's a part of me that is really afraid of video. I can do public speaking, I can do podcasting, I can stand up and talk in front of people, no problem. But the minute I hit record, I struggle. I don't know what to say. I ramble. It's very clear that I get worried that I'm not that engaging or exciting to watch. And then I think I subdue myself even more because I don't want to be this wacky, wild character. Like I'm trying to be myself and professional, and I don't want to come off as too much. And I'm so worried. There's so much judgment going on, and it's not entertaining or fun to watch. And I think I'm not saying to go wacky and wild to entertain people and educate people, but you've got to make it engaging. So you've got to start with the hook, or you've got to at least look lively and look like you want to be there. I don't know. There's a whole lot of growth opportunity here for video presence and video content. And I'm recognizing that. I'm going to say yes and to this video stage presence that could use a whole lot more improvement. I'm really excited about this. This will be fun. And I hope you're feeling inspired like I am too. Also, feel free to reach out if anything came up for you, or you know what would be really cool? You could share with Chris a video or share a video with me that you did. Even if you post it online, you could tag us in it. Be like, hey, I did a video because I listened to this podcast and I was inspired. I think that would be really cool. So I'm just putting that out there. If you end up doing that and you're feeling so moved that you do it, feel free to tag us and let us know that this podcast helped you. I love Chris's energy and how he brings so much excitement to the table, and how he was looking at LinkedIn and going, people just keep posting the same type of content over and over. And I feel like there's more to explore here, and there's more that we can do and make things more exciting. And I just want to toss that over to you. Is what's something in your life that you're like, this is a little stale. This could be improved. I could explore more here. Like I'm kind of doing the stretch it out, expand it out motion with my hands right now. What can we explore? What can we change? How can you shake things up and do things different? I personally love talking to all these guests because they have amazing stories, and I always feel so inspired hearing them. And I'm always like, oh yeah, I don't have to follow the same molds that everyone else does. Like what works for someone may not work for me, and that's okay. And I really feel like Chris is kind of paving his own path in video sales and video content, and you can pave your own path too. You just have to figure out what that path is. And, how can you explore more and just kind of see what comes up? Get real reflective and check in and be like, I think I could do this better. I mean, that's what kind of started it for me with my business. Is it was during the pandemic, and I was watching a lot of webinars, and it was just a ton of talking head presentations. And I was like, I want to gouge my eyes out rather than watch this webinar, which is a very big exaggeration, I know. But there were a whole lot of other things I would rather do than watching that webinar. And it was just, it was such a missed opportunity that the speakers had. And I wanted to do it better. I was like, I know I can do it better. And I know I can bring a lot to the table and make things more engaging and make people stop answering emails and stop checking emails and stop scrolling the internet and actually listen and pay attention. So there's something out there for you. What are you thinking? What can you explore more? What can you shake up? I know you got something in you, and I can't wait to hear it. As a reminder, you can always reach out to me on social media. I'm on Instagram at Improv-ly Speaking. On LinkedIn, I'm at Dayna Gowan. And you can find out more about me and this podcast and my business at improvySpeaking.com. Thanks so much for listening today and supporting Improv-ly Speaking. Go out and flex your creative thinking. I'll talk to you next time.